Good afternoon and welcome. You're listening live to Heart to Heart, a program which aims to help you understand and to become your loving self. I'm Dr. Mitra Rashidian. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified sexologist here in private practice in Encino, California. Welcome to our program at KMET 1490 AM ABC News Radio. Usually I'm here with my partner, Dr. Robert Jaffe, which he is taking a day off today and he's not going to be here today with us. However, we're going to, have him with us tomorrow at a program that we have at 9 o'clock, which is about relationships, addictions, codependency, and trauma. So we wish him well, and I hope that he can accomplish whatever task he wanted to accomplish. And we are missing him. I miss him, so he's going to be here tomorrow, and I'm here for the entire hour in this program. Usually, if Dr. Robert was here, he would have said that we are born into the world as our loving, authentic, true self, which is open, calm, curious, emotionally available, connected, honest, confident, compassionate, sexual, and trusting, which are all the qualities, beautiful qualities that we are born with naturally, right? Those are the God's, gifts that He gives us, so that when we are here, we are so pure, we are our own authentic, true self, and we can function as that, as exactly that. Only if we are not exposed to external factors that kind of impacts our life throughout our lives. So at this point, I'd like to welcome you. I'd like also to invite you to please call us. This program is for you. We are providing you with what we think that, people are interested to know. However, this may not be your own unique interest. Therefore, please call us 951-922-3532. And if you are the fourth caller today, you're going to be receiving a 15-minute free consultation with myself or with Dr. Jaffe. That's your choice offline, so that we can talk about a particular concern that you may have. Generally, aside from that, we would like to welcome you to this program. The line is open for you, and you can also visit us at YouTube, heart-2-heart.online/YouTube. Also, please introduce this program to those that they can benefit from listening to our topics. So thank you, and with that, I'm going to follow up with the qualities that Dr. Jaffe talks about, sexual and trusting. And then, so one of the factors that really impacts our lives when it comes to sex, because today's program is about sexuality, human sexuality. And today I'm going to point out about sexual shame. So sexual shame is one of the concepts that takes away our authenticity, in particular in our sexual relationship. And, shame, so people will say, well, what is shame? If I want to give you a good example, it will be when we feel guilty about something, we feel guilty as though we did something wrong, right? And then shame actually tells us, I am wrong, I am bad, I'm no good, right? So when a person is shameful, it is in that deep, dark, alone place by himself or by herself that only that particular person can experience and understand what the shame is doing to them, right? Shame is an isolated experience. Why do we call it isolated? Because our experiences are unique to ourselves, and how that impacts us is unique as well. And therefore, the shame associated with that becomes unique and becomes an isolated situation that, when we go in there, we don't want to take anybody with us. So as you can see, every one of us experiences shame in a different way, in their or our own unique way, and depending on when it happens, how it happens, the frequency of experiencing shame in life definitely, is what makes us to be even comfortable with living in a shameful, mindset. So the impact of it can be lifelong or can be situational if it is only happened sometimes in life. But some of us actually, we grow up with shame. We believe that we are a shameful person. And then we're going to get to that to see how is that happening here. So shame is an overwhelming sense of feeling bad about ourselves, since it really means that, like I said, I'm doing something wrong. I did something wrong. I am wrong. And then it impacts who we are. Now, when it comes to intimate relationships, shame can take us away from our authentic true self, because since we may not, feel good about ourselves, feel that there is so much that, if we don't feel good about ourselves for whatever reason, and if we don't feel confident that we can say what we want or what we don't want, right? Because we think there is so much at stake, in our marriage or in our long-term relationship. And the fear of loss, the fear that we could become judged by what we say or by what we do, right? We can lose that connectedness, we can lose that closeness. We can use our companion, we can use our partner, lose them. And then over time, we just go back to that isolated place that I told you. So the feeling of loss, feeling of losing what is so precious to us can actually keeps us in a place of shame, especially when it comes to vulnerable situations such as sex, right? Therefore, this is something that we're going to be looking into today to see how we, each of us are experiencing our shame when it comes to our sexual relationship, and how, that shame is impacting what's going on with us. So I'd like to again invite you, please call us 951-922-3532. And let's talk about sexual shame. Shame is something that we all experience, right? I don't know of anybody who has said to me in therapy or outside therapy that, they have never felt shame and they're not familiar with it. I know that when couples come to see me, they all talk about how, due to their shame and then the associated fear of loss, they haven't been able to express about their sexuality. They haven't been able to say what they want, from their sexual relationship. They haven't been able to connect. They haven't been even fully participate in the sexual act, because there is so much going on in their mind about shame that, prevents them from becoming or staying or experience who they are as sexual beings. Therefore, a shame can impact our lives in a variety of ways, emotionally, physically, in our relationship. For sure, shame plays a huge role, and it depends on how we are introduced to shame. It can actually, kind of paralyze our brain when it comes to expression. It can stop us from success. It can stop us from having a good relationship. And so the end results are not really good. So we want to know basically why, why shame, impacts sexuality so much. So we can understand, for example, if, as children, our teacher calls on us for a question and we don't know the answer, we may become embarrassed and feel ashamed that we didn't know the topic. But, after a few minutes or sometimes an hour or the next day, we forget about it. So it doesn't really impact us unless it is done frequently, right? Like every day, several times a day. But when it comes, to sex, there is a reason that we believe about shame, and we become so shameful. Sexuality is a very sensitive area in our life. Most of us, when we have sex or we are introduced to sex, or in particular for the first few times of our sexual relationship, we aim to make a good impression and give our partner a great experience. And even if it is not our first time, or it doesn't matter how many times we have had sex, our aim is to provide a good impression, right? But guess what? Sometimes we even don't know what that good impression means, or how can we, give a good impression, because we're so unfamiliar with our sexuality. We are so don't want to talk about it because sex is taboo, that we haven't had any formal education about our sexuality or sex to begin with. Our best teachers have been movies, porn industry, television, books and articles, internet, and our friends' various form of experiences. So these are our main source of education. And then, so even if you want to feel pleasure, and then we don't know how to go by doing that. So thanks to nature, sex happens, right? But then again, to be sexual being, that's different, right? We can't always rely on nature to give us the best experience, but it does give us our natural instinct and natural experiences. So many, due to shame, they decide only to please their partners and not focus on themselves, because due to shame, they don't find themselves good enough to experience the pleasure. So let's see. Let's find out the big teacher in our lives about sex and sexuality and what makes it shameful. And then that teacher is nothing but culture, right? Our lives are impacted by culture, or by the many cultural do's and don'ts that they have been, imposed negatively on us, and they have given us negative messages about sex, in particular to female, members of societies. So how this is done, stating that talking about sex, having sexual feelings, or expressing about, one's sexuality, sexual pleasure, are all shameful acts and are sinful thoughts and behaviors. So when do we receive these messages? Well, we don't, in some cultures actually, we receive these messages so explicitly, and then we receive these messages also via indirect form of conversations, communications. We hear it from other people, we hear it from our friends as they have learned it. So there are many ways that culture gives us the impression about how sex is a negative thing and how we are not supposed to think about sex and feel sexual, right? So we are getting close to our commercial break. And after that, I would like to invite you to join me, please, so we can talk about this topic that happens every day. And don't forget to call us 951-922-3532. See you after break. Welcome back from our commercial break. This is Heart-to-Heart program at KMET 1490 AM ABC News Radio. This is Dr. Mitra along with Dr. Robert. Dr. Robert is taking the day off, and he's already been missed here for sure. And he's going to join us tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock for another episode of addictions, trauma, codependency impacting relationship at 9 a.m. So I'm inviting you to please join us then as well. And if you're just tuning in, our program for today, our discussion is sexual shame, which has impacted many lives historically and presently. And unless we do something about the shame and how we learn to experience that, this may continue, and we don't want that, right? Because we want a healthy, happy sexual life. And so you can visit us on our YouTube at heart-2-heart.online/YouTube. And please call us 8951 922-3532. And if you are the fourth caller today, you're going to receive a 15-minute free consultation by myself or by Dr. Robert, whichever you choose offline. And please introduce this program to those that you believe they can benefit from. And we thank you for taking your time and joining us during this hour and listening to our show. So let's see, we are talking about sexual shame, right? So shame is a concept that it's developed within us since childhood. In particular, sexual shame is something that we are taught to feel shameful about our sexual beliefs, our sexual thinking, our sexual feelings. And then, so that stays with us, just like many other factors that we learn, and we apply them in a later life. So sexual messages are among those strong feelings that and beliefs that they stay with us, right? Because the messages come from the people that we trust them the most. That means our parents and also the society that we live in. They come from our, religious members. They come from our society, and then collectively they are telling us that sex is taboo. However, when we come to relationship, sex becomes something that we do. So what happens to all that tabooness, right? Suddenly, within one instance of sexual episode, we're not supposed to feel shameful anymore about sex. Well, I don't know how can all that belief and practice and experience vanish overnight, right? It's just not going to happen. And besides, not to mention the reason that it's not going to happen, because shame becomes a part of who we become, right, as our own false self, not as our authentic true self, but as our own false self. And the more we live a life based on our false self, the more we can experience shame, in particular when it comes to sexual relationship. So there are, several factors that may cause shame beside the, those internalized belief and perceptions, which I think, I like to talk about those a little bit. During my graduate program and postgraduate program, when I was doing research about female sexuality, I ended up having interviews with many women, and I don't know how many interviews I have across the past 25 years. But I know that with each woman that I talked to, there were stories of suffering. There were stories of feeling guilty. There were stories of feeling shameful about themselves, about their body, about their sexual feelings, about their confusion about, what is right about sex, what is not right about sex, about the fact that they could have boyfriend or not having boyfriends, or if they had boyfriend, what could be involved in their relationship, to what degree they could have physical connection or not. And, also not understanding their sexual feelings, because if one is not allowed to to experience their sexual feelings, if one is not allowed to talk about their sexual feelings, which sexual feelings, human sexuality, is a core part of human being. It's like telling people don't breathe. It's like telling people don't eat, don't sleep. So it's a need, that we need to attend to it. Yes, I agree that we need to attend to it in a healthy way. And this is why we are offering these programs, right? So if somebody growing up is being told sex is bad, sex is shameful, you need to be frightened from having sex. Shame on you for wanting to know your genitals. Shame on you for touching yourself and talking about it. Shame on you for having sensation, sexual sensation. Shame on you for wanting to know what's down there, right down there, as though it is a separate part of our body that nobody can have access to it, including ourselves, right? So for men, of course, that's boys, that's different, because that's an easier concept. But for women, it was and it is still a huge sinful act to know about their genital, to know about their, sexuality, to explore it, to share it, to want it, to understand it, to talk about it. So you see, in every possible human way that a person is able to learn, when it comes to sex, all that these doors are closed. And if somebody wants to break this taboo, and if somebody wants to walk away from traditional learning and have a new exploration, they are told, shame on you, right? When I was becoming a sexologist myself, I have received several of those messages that, how do you want to go on the, in front of a camera and talk about sex? Have you thought about your parents? You know that you're disrespecting your family. You know that, it's not for you to do this. You're too valuable to ruin your reputation because you want to talk about sex. I mean, if I want to sit down and talk about how many times I've been stopped from talking about human sexuality, which is a science on its own, right? And I've been stopped to do that. However, my own belief that, unless we overcome the taboos, we will never learn about ourselves as sexual beings. We will never learn about our sexuality. And therefore, we could actually be in trouble most of the time, right? Because if we don't know about our sexuality, we don't know what to do about it. We don't know how to attend to it. We don't know how to take care of ourselves. And we can end up in abusive relationships. We can end up just pleasing our partners. We can end up just saying yes to everything because we want to keep our relationship, right? So shame can be a dangerous concept. We can't just say sex, okay, we shouldn't be talking about it, it's a closed subject and let's just forget about it. No, please know this, believe in yourself. The more you talk about your sexuality, the more you're going to understand yourself, the more you can therefore protect yourself from harm. So not talking about it is harmful. Talking about it is education. So, and that's what we want. So these women, tell me about their shameful experiences about sex. They're not knowing, how much it got them into trouble. They're wanting to talk about their sexuality and then getting what felt safe to them, what felt good to them, how that was, placing them in a shameful place in the society, whether that was just within a family member or a larger society. How not talking about sex and sexuality got them into unwanted pregnancy, domestic violence, and so many things, so many negative experiences, unwanted marriages, arranged marriages. So how many of them, felt really guilty when they talked about sexuality? And then how actually walking away from their home culture or the culture that they grow up with help them understand themselves as a human being, as a sexual being. Once they learn that shame can be put aside so that they can take a look at themselves for the first time accurately. I know of many women that I talked about, they never knew what their genital looked like, because down there it's such a no place to go to and to explore. Many women, when they even take a shower, they don't touch themselves, right? Because it's a shameful area. So you see that the beliefs, when they became a part of a person's perception, it can have devastating impact on how people actually treat themselves. And then therefore how that treatment goes into a relationship, into a sexual relationship, and it works against them. So shame, it's a toxic feeling, basically. It's so toxic that it can ruin a person's life, in particular female. When a girl or a female basically becomes sexually abused, they don't talk about the abuser due to shame, because culture tells them, oh, you shouldn't have worn that dress, or you shouldn't have walked at nighttime by yourself, or you shouldn't have just gone to that party, you shouldn't have had a drink, you shouldn't have this, you shouldn't have that. So it all falls on the female, and then the female due to the shame of doing something wrong, and therefore now they are that wrong concept because they allowed, they were abused, or they had sex, or they felt sexual, they are blamed for, right? So the shame of doing something wrong doesn't allow them to talk about who was the abuser, how the abuse happened. And then as a result, the abuser may come back to this person and then continue with their abuse, sexual favor. And then imagine what happens to a woman like that. And even when they are in that devastating situation. And these abusers can go on and abuse other women, other boys. The other day I got this data, which was really, sad, that 1 out of every 7 boys under age 18, they get sexually assaulted. 1 out of 5 female under age 18, they get sexually assaulted. And majority of these people who are the abusers are among the closest people that these people know of, like parents, like uncles, like brothers, like cousins, like neighbors, their employers. So usually the abusers are among the most familiar people in our lives. And then due to shame, due to be punished, due to all that factor, a female doesn't talk, right? I know of a few females that unfortunately, due to their cultural limits, when they were raped or they had sex, they were forced to have sex, they actually committed suicide because due to shame, they didn't know what to do. So we can see the impact of shame when it comes to our sexuality, and it's not an easy concept to just overlook. It's not something to just say, oh, shame on you because you're feeling sexual, or shame on you because you have picked up a book to read about sex and sexuality so you can understand yourself. When I ask women, what do you know about your sexual self? They say, what is sexual self? So that's usually the very first question that I'm asked. What is sexual self? Well, sexual self is that aspect of yourself that is you, your authentic true self, and you have an understanding based on your gender about your sexuality. What do you want? What do you desire? What do you like? What don't you don't like? Or how do you want to go about talking about your sexuality? And if you don't know that aspect of you, you really are missing a very huge part of yourself. But we don't go there because shame on us for breaking the taboo. But the taboo exists because of shame, because of us feeling shameful to break the taboo, to go after it, to break it, to not want the taboo anymore, right? So that we can understand ourselves. It is about our health. Did you know that shame doesn't allow us to go to our doctors and talk about our sexuality? Women, when they have some form of sexual transmitted infection, they don't want to know about it until it gets to the very painful worst part, right? So shame even doesn't allow us to take care of our sexual health. Shame doesn't allow, physicians and therapists to talk about sex and sexuality. When was the last time that one of you went to a physician's office, to your gynecologist or to your urologist or your family physicians as part of your yearly checkup, and they ask you, by the way, how's your sex life? Are you happy? Do you have any complication? Do you experience any problem? Can we test you for STIs or something? If you're among those people that you receive that question frequently, I like to know about you. Please call me so that I can have your experience as part of my research, because we know that this is so rare, this is so limited. And when I did the research on that myself, the physicians and the therapists, the psychologists, they all told me, oh, we're so embarrassed to ask our patients. So we are shameful to talk about sexuality. Physicians are shameful about sexuality. So what are we supposed to do? I guess we are close to commercial break. And after we come back, yes, I can talk about how shame can show itself in different parts of our lives, and take it from there and see what we can do about it. So we should see you in a short few minutes after our commercial break. Thank you. Break. This is Heart to Heart at KMET 1490 AM, ABC News Radio. Dr. Mitra and Dr. Robert are here. Our today's discussion is sexual shame. Dr. Robert is not here today with us. He's having a day off, but he's truly missed here. But he's going to join us tomorrow at another program that we have at 9 o'clock Friday, relationship, codependency, trauma, and addiction. So please join us then. And he's going to be there tomorrow. You can visit us at YouTube at heart-2heart.online/YouTube, and please introduce this program to those that they may benefit from the content. And we want to thank you for joining us every Thursday and every Friday for our program at 3 p.m. and also at 9 a.m. on Fridays. We appreciate your interest into this program, and this program is for you. We are offering you information that we hope you can benefit from, and we hope that you can enjoy. Our phone number here is 951-922-3532. And as I said at the beginning of the program and during previous commercial break, if you're the fourth caller today, you will receive a 15-minute consultation free with either myself or with Dr. Robert Jaffe. So with that, we're going back to our program, our discussion, which is about sexual shame today, and how that sexual shame impacts our lives. Before the commercial we just had, I mentioned that I did a research about sexual health care and how providers of service like physicians, psychologists, other form of therapies, other healthcare industry in general, are not actually involved in sexual health care unless, and as they said in my research, and this research was conducted through the University of New England in Australia, University of California, Irvine, Loma Linda University School of Health in California. We did the first round of the program was completed in 2011, and then we continue with that for my postdoctorate program, and we finished it by 2014. And after that, the data has been, published in variety. The results has been published in a variety of scientific journals. And if you're interested to read about them, please go to ResearchGate. It's one word, research, and then gate. And then you can type my name, Mitra Rashidian, and you can see all those articles listed there. And you can see how the data shows that shame, it doesn't matter how educated we are, it doesn't matter at what, part of society we are functioning, it doesn't matter what social status we have. We can be physicians and feel shame to talk about sex. And when I saw the result of my research, that was alarming. That was so devastating. How can we, as physicians, as provider of healthcare industry, we can feel shameful to talk about, our patients' sexuality? Many of these patients, they come to us because they have sexual problems, they have sexual pain, they have low sexual desires, they have erectile dysfunctions, they have, premature ejaculation problem, they have, sexual transmitted infections, sexual transmitted diseases, and they have gender identity issues. They need clarity, they need to understand themselves, and they need to be able to talk to somebody who knows all of this and can lead them to the right direction. They can give them information, they can help them to go somewhere for their answer, even if they don't want to do this, even if the physicians don't want to do this. And I hope some physicians are listening to me right now. And if you are, I want to invite you, please read my articles to please see which category applies to you. I know that when I talk to some of the physicians at Loma Linda University and also some other physicians at other universities I talk to, Stanford University, for example, I interviewed physicians there. And they told me that, here's the interesting part. for them, many of them don't know even where to begin to, because during their medical school, all the training they received was only like less than 20 hours in the entire medical school training. So if they have at least 4 years of medical schooling to become MD, human sexuality maximum did not go over 20 hours. Many of them on average have received between 12 to 16 hours about human sexuality. So how could that be sufficient? And when I asked them, why is that? They said, because, well, it's not a matter of priority. Many people die of other serious diseases, so nobody wants to invest on human sexuality, right? And also nobody feels comfortable. So feeling comfortable due to shame, due to cultural, expectations, due to their upbringing, due to their religious beliefs and affiliations, due to the do's and don'ts of society, they have internalized that they're not supposed to think to talk about sex. It's okay to have sex, in closed doors and in the dark, and all of that, but don't talk about it, don't question about it, don't explore about it, don't talk to your patients about it. So where do people go if they have questions about their sexuality? Right. So it's one thing for us to tell people, oh, don't be shameful, you can talk about it, sex is great, sex is a part of life and it's normal and all of that. But that's an adult kind of education, that's kind of an adult message. But when somebody is grown up with the concept that sex is the shameful thing, how can they just suddenly put all that aside and decide that, oh, okay, I'm going to be open about my sexuality? So as providers of service, as provider of health industry, and we are all part of health industry, we need to identify our own biases about sexuality. We need to identify our own limitations about talking and exploring about sexuality with our patients. Yes, some of them said, if we bring up the topic of sexuality, we may get sued. Well, if you do that inappropriately and without knowledge and without training, you actually may experience being sued. That is correct. So I don't disagree with that. However, if you're a trained professional and you know how to bring up the subject, why would you get sued? People would appreciate receiving firsthand, good education about their sexuality. If we do that as provider of healthcare, this is how we break the taboo. This is how we can help society to overcome the limitations of, why we don't talk about sex, right? Imagine, I interviewed female, participants. And I said, well, what's their experience when they go to their gynecologist? Can they bring up sexual topics? And some of them said, oh, absolutely no way that they will do that, because their female gynecologists even don't want to talk about sex. They don't bring it up. They don't bring it up, so they don't bring it up. But somehow they understand what they're talking about. And I don't know how many times, women can become misdiagnosed because nobody talks about it, but we just assume what's going on with them, right? And then some participant told me that their female gynecologist told them, they're not trained in sexuality, so they need to refer them out. And then when it comes to ask for referral, they said, well, you need to check around yourself. They even didn't have referrals. So you see, when we talk about sexual shame, we can see the impact of it. And it's not fair to put shamefulness, just put it on the women or on the men themselves and say, is your responsibility to get over your shame, or is your responsibility not to feel shameful? Is your responsibility to go and ask your questions? It's not. It's everybody's responsibility as provider of service, and I will emphasize on that more and more and more, because my years of research has shown that how physicians' lack of proactivity about bringing sexual concept up in a conversation with their patient has left patient with devastated situations. Sometimes they were not reversible. So when physicians say they don't want to talk about it, I had a survey. I actually designed a survey and I submitted the survey to. One study was in California actually, and I targeted about close to 2,000 physicians practicing in California, and those were among the physicians that could potentially have patients with sexual issues. And we got the response rate that they showed that so some of them was about the barriers that physicians felt. Some of them was about the level of comfort that physicians felt. Some of it was about finance, that they say that insurance company may not pay for sexual health care. I mean, barriers, of course, primarily had to do with cultural factor, religious factor, place of birth, age of the physician, and also years of practice, and then level of training that they receive or did not receive during medical school. So we see one aspect of it is the training. The majority aspects of it belongs to personality and also the cultural do's and don'ts that a physician may have experienced and still experience in their lives. And it doesn't matter male or female. As a matter of fact, my research shows that female physicians and female therapists are more open to talk about sexuality with their patients than men are. So go figure. Naturally, older physicians, they don't want to talk about sex with their patients. And of course, the much younger physicians, so I'm talking about age 30 plus, between 30 and 40, so those very young graduates from medical school, they were far more open to talk about sexuality with their patients. So we can see that shame is not just related to people, it's not just related to average person, it's not just related to how one is grown up. Even at the high level of society, we don't have that. So that's alarming. And this is all about shame controlling society. And that's because, shame is being used as a tool to control people. And one way to control people is through their sexuality. So the issue is much bigger than what we can just talk about it in an 50 minutes of a program. It's a much bigger issue there than we can think. And so if you are feeling shameful about your sexuality, first of all, you're not alone. And then don't feel bad because you don't want to talk about your sexuality. Don't feel bad because you don't know what to say or how to perform or how not to perform and what to say. And you can't identify your wants or desires and pleasure points or anything. Don't feel bad about it because you're not the only one. And also, it's not your fault that you don't know how. It's not your fault that you're feeling shameful, right? This is a kind of ubiquitous situation across society. Shame is a big umbrella that, holds many people underneath of that, under the umbrella of shame, so that, we can't talk about our sexuality. But they all help, and then just look around, find a professional who is able to talk about sexuality, just like myself. And so there are other parts that I don't know how far I can go today to talk about it, but factors that, brings more shame to the picture are body image. It's about understanding how our genital looks like. It's about having and learning about sexual assertiveness, feeling safe to share our feelings, desires, emotions, wants, and what we don't want in our sexuality. And know that shame ultimately, as I said, it's a toxic feeling that we do not want to have. If we are feeling shameful about something, we need to look outside to see how we learn to be shameful. And we are not bad because we're feeling shameful about sexuality. We haven't done anything wrong to be shameful about, right? We have our feelings that they are unknown to us. We have our experiences that some of them were imposed and some of them we just had to go through to learn about them, right? We are not in a position to educate ourselves, and therefore when we don't know things, what do? We just assume and we just perform based on that, right? And then there are times when shame is necessary. However, most of the time, our sense of shame, comes from who to get help, and we need to identify with doing that, and then finding people who can help us to overcome all the obstacles that we have about our sexuality. And it's a big issue, and I hope that this program has been helping you, it's been able to help you to understand about the concept of shame within sexuality, and don't feel bad about it, but instead go and find out how you can help yourself if you are among the group of people who feel shameful about your sexuality. So our program is ended. Thank you for listening to me today. Please join us tomorrow at 9 o'clock. So Dr. Robert and myself are going to offer you another episode about relationship, and then look forward to see you next week at the same time, 3 o'clock, to continue with another topic about human sexuality. And until then, be safe, and all you need is love. Bye-bye.
Serving the Inland Empire and desert communities, this is 1490 AM KMET, Banning, Beaumont, Redlands, and Palm Springs.
From ABC News, I'm Daria Albinger. He's been trailing in the polls, and he's been dealing with deepening economic and public health crises. And today,